Chapter 8. The Pinnace. With our food situation improved, I began to consider what else we might get from the wreck. The boat was the most tempting, but my wife was very much against the idea. "Your being away all day is bad enough," she said, "but you'll all end up staying overnight on this wreck, and I'll be worried sick." "I suppose I promised not to sleep on the wreck," I offered. "I'm only trying to make our lives easier, including yours. There are items aboard that will be lost forever when the wreck breaks up." "Which would probably happen when you were asleep on it." "Very well, my husband, I'll accept your promise, but in God's name, be careful." Neither of us was entirely satisfied, but it was the best compromise I was likely to get, so I smiled and agreed. The boys were looking forward to the adventure and began packing in the highest of spirits. We had an easy hike to Safety Bay. After feeding the geese and ducks in the swamp, we put on our swimming belts and boarded the boat tub. With the raft in tow, we caught the current for the wreck. Once aboard the vessel, I directed my sons to hunt and load useful items while I studied the crated boat. It was a typical small craft, called a pinnace by sailors, and would be very difficult to salvage. The crates and large parts were in good condition, but were stowed at the far end of the hold in a very narrow space. I was not sure we had the combined strength to move the heavier parts to a better work area. On top of that, we knew very little about boat building. On the other hand, every part was marked with numbers to aid in assembly. That would compensate for our inexperience. I considered the matter while listening to the sounds of my sons rummaging about. I realized the greatest problem was having enough room to assemble the boat. I made my decision. "Room," I cried. "That's what we need, my boys. Room to work." They gathered around, radiating confidence. I was not as confident as they were, but pushed on, saying, "Get axes, all of you, and let's break this compartment down." After a day of chopping and hacking, we had made little progress. This would take many days of work. The pinnace lay like a fossil embedded in a rock. We set sail for Tentholm, tired and disappointed. To our great surprise and pleasure, my wife and little Franz awaited us at Tentholm. "I decided to move here while you're working on the wreck. You won't have to walk so far, and I won't have to lose sight of you," she said. "You are a good, sensible, and kind wife," I exclaimed. "We will work even harder so you can return to your dear Falconhurst as soon as possible." "Come and see, Mother," cried Fritz. The boys showed her 2 small barrels of butter, 3 of flour, bags of corn and rice, and many other supplies we had brought back. I saw from her delighted expression that our disagreement was mended. For some days we followed a routine. We started early each morning. After loading the boat and raft, we got to work on the pinnace. Once we had the area cleared around it, we began assembling it in place. At dusk, we sailed for shore. At length our pinnace was complete, yet imprisoned behind massive wooden walls. Timbers built to survive deadly storms were surely too strong for us. I couldn't think of any way to free it, but we were so close. I was beginning to despair when I got an idea. "Put some rollers under the pinnace, boys, then make a small fire to heat up the tar and finish caulking it. Be careful." In the meantime, and without explanation, I got a large cast iron tub and filled it with gunpowder. I secured a block of oak to the top, then drilled a hole. With their help, I placed the tub with the top against the timbers on the seaward side, and then secured it with heavy chains. If I had planned correctly, my device would blow a big hole without damaging the pinnace. My boys were each finishing up the caulking. I told them, "Enough for today. I'll put out the fire while you board the boat." I put out the fire, and then I lit a slow-burning fuse attached to the tub and hurried to join my sons in the boat. We sailed for Tentholm, my heart pounding the entire way. Once ashore, we began unloading the supplies and beaching the raft. No one noticed my anxiety as I listened for the result of my work. It came a few seconds later with a tremendous flash, and blam! There was a fireball, then a great cloud of smoke, but no visible change in the wreck. My family turned first to look at the wreck, then at me, terror in their eyes, and I said nothing. "Perhaps," said my wife, straining for calm, "you left something burning near the powder magazine." "Probably so," I said quietly. "If I failed to put it out, it's my fault. I'd better investigate. Will anyone come?" The boys no urging, and jumped into the boat. I told my wife not to worry and then jumped in and piloted us out to the wreck. On the shore side of the wreck, where we usually boarded, there was no change. We rowed around and were treated to a marvelous sight. The side was blown completely open to daylight. With the water covered with floating wreckage, better still, the little boat looked uninjured. The boys eyed the damage in glum confusion. I shouted in delight, "Hurrah, she's ours! Now we can sail the pinnace free!" At first my boys looked at me as though I were mad, and then they guessed my secret. "You planned it all! What a clever father! That machine was a bomb!" They followed me eagerly through the gaping hole in the side, and to my great satisfaction the pinnace was untouched. My device had directed most of the blast away from it. As we marveled, I explained the engineering method by which I had aimed the explosion. We rigged levers, pulleys, and a rope to the pinnace. With everything arranged, all hands hauled, and the lovely vessel slipped gently into the water. She floated without a single leak. Our painful, back-breaking toil had paid off. We stayed just long enough to tie up our prize into the most sheltered part of the wreck, and then sailed the tugboat back to Tentholm. We explained to my wife that one side of the ship was blown out, but that a few more days of work would gain us the rest of its useful treasures. We spent those days completing the pinnace's riggings, mounting her two little brass cannon, and getting her ready for sea. My boys acted as though we now had our own navy. They kept talking about pirates attacking, brave defenses, and final defeat of the invaders. "I'm sure you would win brilliant victories," I said, chuckling at their bravado. "But I thank God if your fighting skills and courage are never put to such a test." Soon we had the pinnace ready for sea. The boys had kept the secret. My wife had no idea. We prepared to tow the raft and tugboat behind the pinnace. I took the helm and Fritz handled the sail. Ernst and Jack each manned a gun. As we entered the bay, I said, "Boys, you've done very well. Prepare to fire a salute." "Load guns," commanded Fritz. The two younger boys rammed powder and shot into the weapons. "Fire!" Jack and Ernst yanked lanyards. Both guns boomed, and the sound echoed across the bay and off the cliffs. We added our own shouts of triumph. My wife and Franz disappeared from sight for a moment and then hurried to the landing place. We brought the pinnace as close as we could to shore, enjoying the astonishment on the shore party's faces. Fritz disembarked to help his mother aboard. What a state she was in! "You dear, awful, wonderful people! Do I scold you or praise you?" she exclaimed. "You scared me to death. First, I see a beautiful little ship sailing in, with no idea who it might be, and then it opens fire. If I hadn't heard you shouting, I'd have run off in the woods with Franz." She paused for breath. "But did you really do all this yourselves? This is charming. I would enjoy sailing in this myself." "It was in the hold, dismantled. We put it together," I said, eyeing my 3 older sons with great pride. "Wonderful. I'm proud of you all," she said. "Now come see how little Franz and I have spent our time." We followed her up the river toward the waterfall. There we found a neat little garden. We don't scare people by shooting off cannons to announce our work, but we do our best just the same. Those are lettuce, cabbages, beans, and peas. "Think what delicious dinners we will have. My dear wife," I exclaimed, "you and Franz have done wonders. Was the work hard?" "The ground is soft here," she replied. "I have planted potatoes and manioc. There is room for sugar canes and the fruit trees. If you want to find a way to irrigate them, maybe with hollow bamboo, I will plant melons as well. It's too hot for some of these vegetables, so I planted corn around them to give them shade. Do you think that'll work?" "It's a great idea. I think we all deserve a nice dinner and rest," I said. We spent the rest of the evening in happy discussion of our many new projects. "I like the pinnace," Jack said, "but I like it twice as much because Mother is pleased." "Life is like that, my son," I explained. "Doing something for yourself can never bring as much happiness as a kindness done for someone else," Fritz smiled, and I rejoiced to see him grow in wisdom. The next morning my wife said, "Today, dear husband, we should return to Falconhurst and take care of the fruit trees." I have put water and earth on their roots, but I could not get them planted, and they will wither. Can you resist the call of the sea today?" "For a day I certainly can," I smiled. "As soon as the pinnace is unloaded, I will go to Falconhurst and do as you ask." Glad for the change of a day on shore, the boys and I got to work, sheltering the new supplies in the tent and making sure the pinnace was securely anchored. We loaded up the sledge with supplies for Falconhurst, set forth. After the merciless heat of Tentholm and the wreckage, the shade of Falconhurst was a cool delight. We had spent several Sundays on the coast, and it was now the day of rest again. We observed it with hearty devotion and praise, but I did little preaching. Instead, I gave a Bible reading and a few simple instructions, and my wife led us in hymns. Then the boys were set at liberty. In the evening, I said to my sons, "I want all of you to practice running, leaping, wrestling, and climbing. These will make you strong, active men." The next day, the boys were eager to obey me. They competed in running, jumping, and lifting. I gave a new order: "Work on your archery, my boys, while I make you something." While they shot, I took a long cord and 2 large round bullets. The soft lead was easy to drill, so I attached a bullet to each end of the cord. When they saw what I had done, they stopped shooting and bombarded me with questions. "This is a bola," I said. "In Central and South America, many people hunt with these. Their bolas are much larger, and they use rocks in place of lead. A mounted hunter can either swing it like a club or throw it to entangle the legs of larger prey. A skilled man can bring down a horse in full gallop." They were delighted. "Father, that's great. Will you try it now?" "There's the donkey, Father. Let's catch him." "He wouldn't like it, and he might panic and break a leg," I said with a smile. "I'd better practice on something else." Ernst pointed to a thin stump. I nodded and motioned everyone to stand clear. My first throw wrapped the lead weights around the target in a way that left no doubt, and every boy immediately wanted a bola for himself. Soon they were all practicing with their bolas. All did well, but Fritz seemed to do best. That night the weather began to change. Early next morning I could feel the wind picking up, and from our high perch I could see the seas roughening. How fortunate that our new pinnace was safely moored in the harbor, that we need not sail for the next few days, and that we had gotten so many supplies while we could. In the morning, as we prepared to plant the fruit trees, I said, If we get done with the orchard today, what do you all say to a trip to Calabash Wood for utensils tomorrow?" Everyone liked the idea, so we began work with great vigor. The walnut, cherry, and chestnut trees we arranged in parallel rows so as to form a shady avenue from Falconhurst to Family Bridge. Between the rows of trees we cleared a road. We planted the vines around the arched roots of our great mangrove. We put the remaining trees in suitable spots, some near Falconhurst and others near Tentholm. By early evening we had finished, all set to work preparing for tomorrow's trip. For even my wife and Franz were coming. It would be a grand family outing. We rose at sunrise, and I harnessed the sledge to the donkey, then mounted Franz on its back. Turk was out front in his fine armor. Next came the 3 older boys with guns and game bags. I led the donkey, and my wife walked beside me. Juno followed us, not too pleased, for Nips insisted on a ride. After an easy trip through Flamingo Marsh, the beautiful country beyond unfolded before us. My wife and 2 of the boys marveled, for they were seeing it for the first time. Suddenly Fritz and Jack turned aside into the brush, and there was a loud barking, then a gunshot, and a large bird fell heavily to the ground just after taking off. Rather than give up, it sprang to its feet and took off at great speed. The chase was on. Fritz and Turk pursued, followed by Juno, who turned so quickly that Nips lost his perch. When they had the bird at bay, it tried to defend itself by kicking with its powerful legs, but by the time I arrived, Juno had the bird by a wing and was struggling against it. I threw a cloth over its head and got it tied up. It was a large, magnificent bustard. We brought it back to our party in triumph. "Ha!" exclaimed Jack. "It's the one we missed that day, Mother. Remember, you got got you this time, old fellow. I think this is a hen buster, the mother bird, said Ernst. Poor thing, said my wife sympathetically. Her chicks will be left unprotected and miserable. Shouldn't we let her go? My dear kind-hearted wife, I answered, that was weeks ago. By now those little birds are all grown up, and I suspect Mrs. Bustard has forgotten them. Besides, she's badly wounded. We should try to cure her if we can. She will be a valuable addition to our flock. We resumed our march and soon arrived at the monkey grove, where Fritz had adopted Nips, or rather Nips adopted him. While Fritz amused us all with his lively description of the event, Ernst was standing under a coconut palm. As he admired the cluster of nuts high above, he sighed. I wish one would fall down. A huge nut came plumping down at his feet, and he sprang aside in alarm, and down came another. Why, this is just like the fairy tale of the wishing cap, cried Ernst. My wish is granted. I suspect that the fairy is trying to chase us away, not give us gifts, I said. I'll bet there's a grouchy ape up there. We examined the nuts and found them unripe, so they couldn't have fallen by accident. Anxious to find out the reason, we all gathered around the trees and gazed up. I see it, shouted Fritz. It's flat. It's as big as a plate with horrid claws, and it's coming down. Little Franz slept behind his mother. Ernst looked around to find a retreat route. Jack raised the butt of his gun, and the creature's descent was slowed enough for us to identify it was as a large land crab. When it came in Jack's reach, he swung at it, but only managed to knock it off the tree trunk. The crab lunged at Jack. He dodged, then took off running with the crab in hot pursuit. A roar of laughter soon shamed Jack into turning around. He took off his jacket, and then he charged the creature, wrapped his coat around it, and began to pound it with his fists. After I stopped laughing, I ran over and struck the jacket several times with the flat side of my hatchet. The movement stopped, and we pulled out the dead land crab. What an ugly rascal, cried Jack. If he hadn't been so hideous, I wouldn't have been so rough. I wasn't afraid. What is it? There are many kinds of land crabs, I said. I think this is a coconut crab, for it climbs these trees to get at the nuts. You were smart to wrap it up, Jack, because some large crabs are swift runners and fight fiercely. Let's take it, as well as the coconuts, and be on our way. We soon reached Calabash Wood and got busy cutting, carving, and hollowing out dishes, bowls, cups, jars, and platters. After some time, Fritz and Jack began to make a fireplace, hoping to cook the crab in a hollow gourd. Their mother attended to the hungry animals, releasing the donkey to graze and give the poor hungry monkeys some coconut milk. The wounded bustard had suffered, so she doctored its injury and tied it to a tree so it could move about a little. The cooking operations halted with the realization that we were out of water. The boys proposed to find a spring. This seemed a safe place to leave my wife and Franz alone for a time, so I agreed. Ernst took the lead. Not far from Calabash Wood, he turned around in horror and shouted, "A huge wild boar! Father, come quickly!" Sure enough, I heard a loud snorting and puffing as some large animal scrambled through the thick brush. "After him, lads! Call the dogs! Get ready to fire!" I ordered. We pressed on to the spot where Ernst had seen the animal. The ground was dug up and some potatoes lay about. We had disturbed the boar's lunch. Ernst and Jack were more interested in gathering the potatoes than chasing the quarry, so Fritz and I gave chase with the dogs out front. Soon, from up ahead, we heard barking, snarling, and grunting. When we reached the scene, each mastiff had hold of a large pig ear. Oddly, instead of preparing for a last stand, the pig seemed to ask us for salvation. It was no wild boar, but our runaway sow. Initial anger gave way to a gale of laughter at the absurd situation. We called off the dogs to free the old lady from her predicament. Our laughter brought Ernst and Jack. "Much help you two would have been if we needed help," cried Fritz. "Ah, well," answered Jack, "we kind of suspected it was the old sow, and just look at these fine potatoes." There was much good-natured kidding all around. Ernst soon interrupted us. "See those fruits she's eating?" he said, pointing to an apple-like fruit on the surrounding bushes and the ground near them. The sow was gorging herself on them. "What if they're poison?" asked Fritz. I examined one. "They're probably safe," I said, "but we'll know for sure if Nips keeps eating them. Let's press on." Jack took the lead, heading for a high rock protruding from the thickets. Soon he cried out, "Father, a crocodile!" I chuckled. "Nonsense, boy. Crocodiles live in water, not dry forests." When I caught up with him, I saw that he wasn't far mistaken. Perched on a low branch was a great iguana, one of the largest of all lizards, fast asleep. "Don't worry, Jack," I explained. "It's harmless, even when awake. But I've read that its flesh is tasty, so let's take it." At this point, Fritz arrived and raised his gun, but I pushed it gently down. "You'd probably only wound it, and then it would escape," I said. I took some cord and made a noose, then attached it to a strong stick. Then I took a light branch in the other hand. I crept slowly toward the sleeping creature, whistling a little tune. The iguana woke up and seemed to listen, craning its head to guess where the music came from. Once in arm's reach, I kept whistling and began to pet and tickle him with the branch. When the creature seemed lulled, I put the noose over its head and pulled. My goal was to knock it on the head with my hatchet, but the heavily armored creature was too quick for me and lashed out with its tail. Jack had come too close, and the impact knocked him over. At the same time, the iguana revealed a row of sharp teeth. The boys were frightened and wanted to beat him with sticks. "No," I said. "Fritz hit him on the head with the flat of my hatchet. He did so, and we had our prize." The boys were impressed with my strategy, for they had never heard of such a method. Fritz picked the iguana up and grunted. "It's very heavy, Father," I said. "Even so," I said, "we don't kill things and leave them lay. It was my idea to kill it, so I'll carry it." With considerable effort, I put the iguana over my shoulders, and we set forth to rejoin the others. As we neared the calabash wood, we could hear mother and child calling out for us. We had been away a long time. We shouted joyously in reply, and they were relieved to see us, though not so relieved at the look of the creature on my shoulders. By this time, they were all quite hungry. Since we had found no water to use for cooking the crab, we canceled our cooking plans, and instead we ate what we brought from Falconhurst. As we ate, we shared our adventures. By the time we finished, it was getting late, so we decided to leave the sledge. We could return for it tomorrow. We put the iguana and the bustard on the donkey. Tired little Franz would have to walk. Our road home lay through a majestic oak forest laden with hundreds of acorns, and we slowed to gather some. We arrived safely at Falconhurst just before nightfall, exhausted and hungry. We dined on broiled iguana with potatoes and roasted acorns. An odd feast, but no odder than our situation. It had been quite an exciting day.